Do you think you could beat a lion in a fight? Not with a knife, not with a gun, with your bare hands? Now this might seem like a crazy question, but according to a 2021 survey, and this was reported in numerous news outlets at the time, in the United States, 8% of American men think that they could beat a lion barehanded in a fight. And perhaps even more amazingly, because, you know, there's lots of deluded men out there we have to accept, and you don't know what condition they were in when they were asked this question, you know, if it was after a few beers in the pub on Saturday night or something like that. But 7% of women in America in 2021 also think that they could defeat a lion barehanded in a fight. Now, I don't know if this is something to do with the global pandemic and lockdown, the effects of people being trapped in their homes for too long, and I don't know. But all I can say is these people are so wrong. Have you never stood near a lion, like in a zoo, or, you know, maybe you've been on holiday on safari or something like that? There is no way on earth that any percentage of men or women could defeat a lion barehanded in a fight. Now, indeed, if we brought knives into it, for example, that completely changes. We have documented accounts right the way across, well, you could go all the way back into prehistory. We know that people have always contended with pretty much apex predators when weapons are involved. If you've got a spear, if you've got a knife, obviously firearms, but even hand weapons. You know, people used to hunt bears with knives. We know people who documented in history have killed giant grizzly bears with nothing but a knife. In Africa, the Maasai hunt lions with spears and knobkerries or other forms of club. So yeah, absolutely. Weapons, no question. But barehanded, really? So let's just consider this for a second. So for those of you who are mostly here for the HEMA, that is Historical European Martial Arts, there's a Vardi reference here. So Vardi goes into some depth. This is in the 1480s, Italian fencing master. And he very concisely explains how humans are basically unarmed. We don't have natural weapons, really. Not compared to the animal kingdom. We don't have long teeth, we don't have claws, we don't have venom, we don't have, you know, spikes or inbuilt armor, this kind of stuff. However, what we do have, of course, is brains and pretty good reactions, and we can move fairly fast and this kind of stuff. But therefore, we're good with weapons, okay? And he's basically saying how use of weapons is how we make ourselves equal to wild animals. Now, wild animals, of course, tend to have teeth and claws and tails with clubs on the end, if you're going back to dinosaurs and things like this. Now, we don't have that. Obviously, I'm not telling you anything you didn't know here. So what do we do if we're fighting unarmed or unarmed? Well, I guess actually many of you may not have thought about this in these terms, but funnily enough, if we look at medieval history, there are occasions during judicial duels when it came down to fighting with no weapons because the weapons got broken or the people turned to wrestling. Now, many of you will watch things like, you know, forms of MMA, UFC and Pride and things like that. But the fact is that we've only got our limbs, and in a kind of life or death situation, I suppose, we've got things like our teeth and our nails. Now, there's lots of things in conventional unarmed martial arts that basically aren't allowed, like biting someone's throat out. But strangely, if we look at the medieval accounts of people fighting to the death, this is mentioned, okay? So thumbs into the eye sockets, ripping out windpipes, biting, this kind of stuff. So we have some rudimentary inbuilt, you know, obviously we have teeth and we have sort of claws, but they're rubbish compared to wild animal. Now, bringing this back to a lion, I won't say that a human can never beat a lion in a barehanded fight. But the reason I said that it was 0% statistically is that it would be a kind of 1 in, I don't know, 1 in 10,000. So you might have less than 1% of people might by chance, by luck, and certainly not reliably, beat a lion in an unarmed fight. And how would they do it? Well, quite simply, they would have to incapacitate the lion with the weapons that nature gave them, that is their arms and legs. So if someone was a highly trained jiu-jitsu or catch wrestler, something like this, or some other forms of unarmed martial arts, where they could essentially strangle the animal, where they could wrestle the animal, strangle the animal. I think this is going to be their best bet. Are you going to be able to kick or punch something like a lion into submission? I would say no. They're just too tough. I don't think, I mean, a lion's skull, if you've ever seen a lion's skull, is far more robust than a human skull. And they're used to being hit by really powerful things like water buffalo and giraffes and stuff. And yeah, sometimes they get broken bones. Sometimes they get killed by a kick from a giraffe. These freak things happen. But generally speaking, they are used to brawling with really powerful animals, including other lions, of course. So something like a bear or a lion or a tiger, I think statistically any humans stand basically no chance, but their only chance, if they're going to try and survive, if they're going to try and win, is wrestling. If they can't use weapons, of course, is wrestling and trying to get a chokehold onto one of these creatures. So possibly someone who's a really fantastic wrestler could get some of these animals into a chokehold. Now, let's have a talk about animals. And this is where I'm going to throw a question out to you. This is a question that I've had in the pub many times with friends of mine. What do you think is the most hardcore animal, the toughest animal that you think you could beat in an unarmed fight? I often claim a goat. I often claim that I could beat a goat in an unarmed fight. And I think in fairness I could. You know, I think I could out wrestle a goat, and I think I could choke it into submission or to death or whatever if I needed to. Could I do that to a cow? Most people say no. I think I could possibly do it to a cow, depending on the type of cow and the size of cow and this kind of stuff. But a cow's pretty big. It's quite difficult to choke out something of that size. You might be able to toss a cow, throw a cow if it was asleep, but could you do it if it was awake and not very happy with you? I don't know. Something like a wild boar, because of its shape and size and aggressiveness, probably not. But some people who are bigger and stronger and better grapplers than me might be able to do it with something like a wild boar. If we get into predatory animals, I would say personally all bears are off the menu for me. I don't think I could beat any bear in a fight without a weapon. Are there any big cats I think I could beat in a fight? Possibly a lynx, but probably not. I've been bitten a few times by domestic cats and they're nasty enough. I think something the size of a lynx, which if you haven't seen, certainly a European lynx, which I think are slightly bigger than American lynxes. European lynxes are, and I've seen them in reserves and in zoos, are about the size of a large Labrador or Golden Retriever, but way better armed and wild and not domesticated, of course. So they've got long teeth, big claws, and they are hench. They've got big, strong arms. I don't think I could beat a lynx, but I think that's the borderline of big cats. Couldn't beat a puma, cougar, whatever you want to call it. Couldn't beat a leopard, no way, not unarmed. So I think basically big cats are out for me. A wolf, depends on the wolf again. Wolves vary a lot in size. There are smaller wolves and bigger wolves. A big sort of Croatian or Norwegian wolf, a male, you know, big, powerful one. I think I probably couldn't, but wolves are definitely not as agile. Sorry, dogs are not as agile. I've spent a lot of my life wrestling with dogs when I was growing up, and dogs, certainly you can kind of throw them, you can get onto their backs. They can't twist around and do things that cats can do. They're not as agile, certainly once you sort of get them off their feet. So I think wolves are a possibility. Certainly some people, maybe not me, but I think some people out there could probably kill a wolf with their bare hands. So there we go. That throws the question open. I'm interested to see what your thoughts on this are. Do you think this 8% of American men who think they can beat a lion in a fight unarmed, do you think they are just completely delusional? Is it just American men? What would be the answer from UK men or French men or Australian men? Would it be higher? Would it be lower? What is going on here? Why do 8% of American men think they could beat a lion in an unarmed fight? That's crazy. I think it's under 1%, and the under 1% would purely be by luck, and because they've got very strong wrestling backgrounds. Anyway, throw that at you. Do you know of any examples from history? Because I actually don't, unless we go back to the ancient world, which is partly wrapped up in myths and legends. Do you know any examples from history of someone unarmed defeating a really considerably tough animal in a fight and killing it. I know examples with weapons, but unarmed, I'm finding it pretty hard to find examples. So interested to see your input and your comments below. Have fun with it, and I'll see you back on the channel really soon for another video. Cheers, folks.